In this video, we're going to be covering operator precedence, and this is going to be a fairly long video because, as you can see, there's a lot of different categories of operators, and there's also some implicit things that Java does that will make problems of operator precedence a bit harder, like some of the casting that will happen without you having to say you're casting. Now, to start with, why are we explaining this? In most programming jobs, you're not supposed to make it so that the person reading your code has to know what the operator precedence table is. Instead, you're supposed to bracket thoroughly so that it's obvious what operations happen first. But because operator precedence is something that programs have, computer science professors will often see it as fair game to put on tests, and they will give you complicated problems involving most of these different types of operators and ask you to figure out what the compiler would result. And you have to know, what order does the compiler use operators? What are some of the implicit rules of each operator and any casting they may do? So we're going to cover the order of operations. Now, as you can see, the first thing here is inside parentheses, array subscript, and member selection. This means that if you give the compiler a statement or an expression, and let's say we give the compiler 3 plus 4 divided by 5. Regardless of what order the compiler would normally evaluate this, if we put brackets around 3 plus 4, it will evaluate 3 plus 4 first, before undergoing any of the other operators. So anything inside of brackets will be evaluated before other operators outside will be evaluated. This is similar to what you'd expect from mathematics. Array subscripting and member selection is also worth noting here. If we have an array, and this is something we haven't fully covered yet, and we try and index that array, that will also be one of the first things that happens. It will grab whatever's in that array before it does anything to the array. Member selection as well. If we have a data structure or a group or anything, or we're grabbing a function from a class, that will happen before anything else. Okay, so that's pretty simple, right? Most people know that what happens in the brackets happens first. And this is, in my opinion, the most important rule, because if you're a programmer, you shouldn't write things like 3 plus 4 divided by 5, because it's just not very readable. You want it to either be 3 plus 4 in brackets divided by 5, or if you want it to happen the other way around, you want it to be 4 divided by 5, then 3 plus beforehand, but the rest is bracketed. Or if you have a sufficiently long statement, you should break it up into multiple lines so that it's really clear what functions you're calling first and second and third. However, you do have to know the rest of these. So the second thing that will happen is unary post increment and decrement, and we discussed this earlier. Post increment and decrement is var plus plus or var minus minus. That is evaluated first. Then we have the rest of the unary operations, so pre-increment and decrement, such as minus minus var or plus plus var. And this is important, unary plus or minus. This is different from addition and subtraction. Say I create the variable x equals minus 5. That minus 5 is different to, or say I created the variable x equals 1 plus minus 5. That minus 5 is different from a subtraction. That's a unary operation. And then casting and logical negation. Logical negation is a Boolean operation, and we haven't really explored it, but all you need to know for now is it happens at this stage. So if I had true and false, it would make, or true or false, which I believe is represented by this here, it would not this true before it would OR the expression. And then finally, we of course mentioned casting. Casting happens at this stage. Casting happens, as we've noted, pretty early on. So unless we have brackets, casting is one of the first things that happens. Now, you'll also notice that I've written these R to L and L's to R. This means that for this first step, it reads it left to right. So that's kind of confusing for parentheses, but for logical negation, it just means that it's doing the negations in right to left order, and for parentheses, it's looking at them in left to right order. This will kind of make a bit more sense with these other operators. So now we have multiplication, division, and modulus. These happen next. Notice they happen before addition, and this is why this output is different to this output. Because ordinarily, the division would happen before the addition. And this is left to right. So if I have system.out.println 3 times 5 divided by 6, the 3 times 5 happens before the divided by 6. Not that it kind of matters that much, but it may start to matter with moduluses. Now, after this we have addition and subtraction, which is also read left to right. Then after this we have relational. The less than, greater than, or instance of happens first, left to right, and then the equation happens after. Now this may be important if you, say, had 5 is less than 4 equals true. This means it's going to do 5 is less than 4 before it equals true. Again, the applications of this are a bit esoteric for now. Now it does and then it does XOR, and then it does OR, and this is read left to right, meaning ANDs are read left to right, XORs are read left to right, and then ORs are read left to right. And then finally, once all of this is done, we have assignment, which is right to left. This is important. Expressions are completely evaluated before assignment takes place, and we alluded to this previously. Now, I mentioned earlier we were going to explore some quite complicated problems, and I actually think it's better to do that in a separate video. So we've just given a couple simple examples. I'm going to go away and write a long list of quite long, ugly expressions that are very hard to see what they're actually going to evaluate to at first. The exact opposite of the kind of code you should be writing. And I'm going to ask, what will they evaluate to? So that's what we're going to be doing next video. For now, though, you can just remember in your head parentheses, then multiplication and division, then addition and subtraction, and that relations and assignments happen at the end. But you do kind of need, you will need the rest of these eventually. You'll need all of them eventually. So it's worth learning a lot of them now, because as you start to learn about some of these more complicated things, such as array subscripting, member selection, logical operators, you'll find that you'll want to know where they fit into the precedence table. All right, see you in the next video.